Alright, starting chapter 3 of the Book of Mediums. It's entitled Plan of Proceeding, and it says that it is a very natural and praiseworthy desire of all spiritists. A desire which cannot be too much encouraged is to make proselytes. And so proselytes means to go out and try to make converts. But I thought before I read that Spiritism doesn't try to go out and make converts. But in any case, I think it's more taken to mean here that to change people's opinion is done because Kardec was really a scientist and he really wanted the study of Spiritism to be accepted as mainstream science. It says that he who wishes to understand this new philosophy should lay himself out for serious work, that the science, like any other, is not to be made a play of it. It touches on every question that interests humanity. Its field is immense, and in its vastness and importance and consequences, this will be found to be true. A belief in spirits is its basis, but the belief is not enough to make an enlightened spiritist. Then the belief in God suffices it to make a theologian. Let us then consider the mode of proceeding which is best fitted to enable propagandists to attain the end they have in view. So he's laying this out to make you effective at proving your point, basically, because otherwise it says you'll be wasting your time a lot of times if you don't really know how to make your points known. It says that you're going to need facts, which is logical, but it's not always best, and aren't necessarily convincing to people. The question of spirit communication is secondary. It's not the starting point. Spirits being nothing else than the consequence of the soul is a proper ground for argument is, does the soul exist? But how can we get materialists to admit that something exists outside the material world when he himself believes that he is nothing but just matter? How can he believe in spirits outside himself when he does not believe that he has a spirit inside himself? In vain you will urge the most conclusive arguments on such a person, because they will contest all arguments, because they do not admit the principle which is the basis. Before trying to make him a spiritist, try to make him a spiritualist. You cannot admit the consequence of spirit communication if you do not admit the premise, which is survival of the soul after death. So that's saying where you should start. Opinion respecting to the soul, that is to say, whether or not they believe in its existence and the survival of the body, of its individuality after death. If their answer is negative, to speak about spirits would just be effort that is thrown away. There are two classes of materialists. One believes that man is nothing but a machine, that when our body is worn out, then we are nothing but just the carcass. These are obstinate and will resist all proof because they do not wish to have a change in opinion. With these people we can do nothing, even if they feign sincerity and say, "Let me see and I will believe." Others more truthfully will say, even if I saw it, I would not believe it. The second class of materialists are more numerous and just say their opinion because they don't have anything better to have an opinion of. They're not materialists from any conviction, and they would be happy to believe because they are uncertain, and their uncertainty and their lack of spirituality is actually an imbalance or a torment to them. They have vague aspirations of the future. They may accept a sound theory, current physics are not able to explain everything, but the rest will come in due time. And then it says, which a ray of light may enliven them. Such doubters are like a blind man, whose eyes you may open, and who will rejoice to behold the day, or like a shipwrecked mariner will seize the plank of safety you will hold out to them. So again, within Espiritismo, we have the prayer of the shipwrecked, and a ray of light, like a ray of wisdom, or empowering them. They're kind of lost at sea among the dross of the material world, or being blinded by it in its density. And says that there's a third class of materialists here who are none less troublesome to deal with. They are incredulous or non-believing through ill will. They find it unpleasant to believe because it would trouble their enjoyment of material pleasures. They would have to put that away somewhat. They fear to see in Spiritism the doom of their ambition, or that they're actually hurting themselves spiritually of their own selfishness, or to have to work on themselves, or their own human vanities, which are their delight. They shut their eyes so that they may not see, and stop their ears so that they may not hear. We can only pity them. A fourth category of materialists are non-believing through interest or dishonesty. They know what Spiritism is, but they outwardly condemn it through motives of other personal interest. They're more self-deceptive. Time may open their eyes and see where their interest lays or what their motivation is. Because they cannot hinder the current of truth, they will at length be swept away by the torrent, together with the artificial interests which they desire to secure. Besides these different categories of opponents, there is an infinity of shades among them, which are non-believers because of cowardice, because they do not have courage to, admit it, because they are going along with the crowd. The non-believers because of their religious beliefs, who can learn through enlightened studies. Spiritism rests upon the fundamental bases of religion that respects all beliefs, and that one of its effects is actually to produce more belief of religious sentiments where they did not exist, or for more faith, and to strengthen them where they were wavering. The non-believing from pride or from a spirit of contradiction, non-believing from carelessness, etc., etc. We cannot admit the other class, which we call incredulous from disappointment, or non-believing because of disappointment. So this is kind of also a crisis of faith. They've abandoned the whole thing. They might have been deceived or discouraged previously, and so they cast the whole thing out because they've been taken in, because they have a previous imperfect knowledge of Spiritism. They've asked Spirit something that they could not answer, or could not tell, or may not tell, or because the Spiritist has not sufficiently been enlightened on the subject to discern truth from impostor. So people are trying to be mediums, and they don't get good results because they haven't developed properly. Some people just see it as a new mode of divination. They fancy that spirits may be able to work for them, to tell their fortunes, and accordingly they will attract flippant and mocking spirits to amuse themselves at their expense, preparing for them disappointments which serious and prudent persons would not have laid themselves open to. Another very large class is those who are undecided. These are generally spiritualists in principle. A great number of people may have a vague intuition of spiritist ideas or an aspiration of something that they cannot define. So sort of like deists. There's something out there, I don't know what it is, etc. I can't explain it, etc. But I do kind of believe in it, but I don't know, etc. These people only require methodical instruction because Spiritism is like a sunrise. It's the brightness of day which can dissipate the mists of night. They will hail it with eagerness because it delivers them from the agony of uncertainty. Now we will turn to the different categories of believers. There are some people who are spiritists and they're not even aware of their beliefs, that they can categorize themselves of this. We find numerous examples of these people among writers, both sacred and profane, among poets, orators, moralists, and philosophers, both ancient and modern. Between people who are convinced of Spiritism, there are people who believe purely and simply in manifestations from what they have observed, and these may be called experimental spiritists. Secondly, among believers, there are those who see it philosophical, they admire its morality, but they do not practice it. They do not change any of their own habits or character, and do not deprive themselves of anything, and remain full of themselves. They remain envious or jealous. They are inconsistent spiritists. Third, those who are not happy with admiring the morality but accept it practically with all its consequences. Convinced that terrestrial life is only a brief trial, they strive to profit by its passing moments and advance on the road of spiritual progress to achieve a higher degree in the hierarchy of the world of spirits through activity in doing good, repressing evil tendencies, and their convictions preserve them from most or all thoughts of evil, and charity in their all things is the rule of conduct. These may be classified as true spiritists, or better yet, as Christian spiritists. Fourth, lastly, there are the excited spiritists. Exaggerating, blind confidence, causing people to accept things too easily without reason, without reflection, and without examination, which would have been shown to be absurd or impossible. Unfortunately, enthusiasm finds it hard to reflect on things and can be more hurtful. Their judgment is to be distrusted. They become easy dupes either of other spirits who hoax them or of men who practice on their credulity. Is there any use in trying to convince an obstinate unbeliever? This depends on the cause and their nature of their incredulity. A true spiritist will never fail to do good. His delight is to give consolation, to calm despair, and to forward the work of moral reformation. There is his mission and his true joy. Spiritism is in the air. It scatters benefits by its very nature because it renders happy those who profess it. When its adversaries feel its influence around them in the homes of their friends, they will understand their own isolation and will be forced into silence or acceptance. To proceed in the study of Spiritism, as done with other sciences, it would be necessary to pass experimentally through the whole series of spirit phenomenon, beginning with the simplest to go to the more complicated, but this cannot be done because it would be hard to go through a regular course of Spiritism like we do in physics or chemistry. In the natural science, we act on brute matter, manipulating at will, with a certainty of a given effect. In Spiritism, on the contrary, we have to deal with intelligences who have their own liberty, freedom, personality, and who constantly prove to us that they are not subject to our own commands. I'm going to say here, at least the higher spirits are not. Just scrolling down here, because a lot of it is very repetitive. It goes into what more like a trained medium is versus spontaneous manifestation that can be just situational, or an untrained medium versus a trained medium. A lot of people are not aware of spirit manifestation that goes around them, but that doesn't make it not a fact. Okay, and that brings me basically to the end of the chapter. Just says at the end of the chapter, that you should read as much as you can. Read the rest of the doctrine on Spiritism. That even bringing these people into seances is not necessarily going to convince people. And that people have their own expectations of what would satisfy their belief or non-belief, their own conditions that need to be met, whether or not you actually prove it. And it's useless to ask for which cannot be had. For these reasons, we admit to our experimental seances, we only, so he's saying that they only let people come to their seances who have enough knowledge to understand what may occur to them, so fully persuaded that we will not lose our time or their time, and even nothing will take them by surprise. A seance is a means to an end, and nothing will take them by surprise, not even failure, because they know the conditions under which the phenomenon occur. Okay, I just wanted to finish up that last part, and I hope that this hasn't been too boring for you. I've tried to condense it down to the most understandable language, and continue to leave your comments, guys. Thanks for watching.